Hello everyone, please press subscribe, press follow, press the bell so you don't miss any new clips. The Divine Nine Dragon Cauldron. Author by Heavenly Overlord. Translator by NYOIBO Studio. Audio novels by Novelist. The Divine Nine Dragon Cauldron. Chapter 106, Glazed Ice Flame. What a lunatic, Wu Pangyun said coldly. Despite knowing the Sea Wolves pirates were so terrifying, Su Yu had still chosen that option. Aside from a lunatic, no one else would do so. However, deep down in his heart, Wu Pangyun was angry and ashamed. Su Yu's fearlessness had contrasted against his own cowardice. Lu Guang gritted his teeth and stared at Su Yu. He decided Su Yu was an eyesore. For the first time, Princess Xuanhuan was visibly moved. She could not understand what, to Su Yu, could be considered more precious than his own life for him to proceed without any hesitation. Alternatively, Master Li, who understood Su Yu's intentions, trembled. His old eyes teared up. Li Guang. To have such a disciple, what more could you have asked for? To repay a kindness, to kill his enemies with his own hands, to hold the promise he made, Su Yu would do whatever it would take. Despite knowing he would die, Su Yu still wanted to battle to his death. Shi Ruolan's slender body slightly trembled. That oath of anger and grief resounded in her ears vividly. That determination that would not bend to 1,000 foes. That undying killing intent, combined with Su Yu's determination to embrace a battle to the death, made Shi Ruolan shudder in fear for the first time. A sliver of fright and shock spread through her heart. She had an illusion that, perhaps one day, she would die in Su Yu's hands. Have the remaining people finished contemplating? Accept the test, or be disqualified. Shi Ruolan restrained her inner impatience and anger. Several elders flew forth and brought their clan descendants back. Their fury was difficult to quell. We only wish for our clan descendants to enter the faction and further their training, not for them seek their deaths. For Lixian faction to conduct such a bizarre test, are you not afraid of angering the 100 vassal clans? You may bring them back, but they will lose their qualification to participate in the entrance exam forever, Shi Ruolan replied faintly. You all are too much. The elders present were unable to suppress their anger. Did that not mean that, either they accept the test and die, or live on, rejected by the faction for the rest of their lives? Wu Pangyun, Lu Guang, and Princess Xuanhuan's faces turned stern as their hearts shuddered. I'll give you all one last chance to decide. Accept the test, or be rejected by the faction forever, Shi Ruolan said calmly. The 100 vassal clans were extremely angry. Such a test was too bloody and cruel. What was actually going on in this year's recruitment exam? Why was it so bizarre? The crowd hesitated for a while. Most of the elders gave the right to decide to the juniors. To take the risk, or be ordinary for the rest of their lives, they would have to make the decision themselves. The majority of the juniors weighed both options and decided on the latter. It was apparent that the mission had no chance of survival. Yet, half of the people, including the Holy Kings and half-Holy Kings, decided to try. With that, only 25 people stayed behind. Wu Pangyun, Lu Guang, and Princess Xuanhuan were all very gloomy. They had no choice but to participate. Only Su Yu remained calm and collected. Shi Ruolan nodded her head. Very good. Now, I will announce to the 25 of you, the rules and the prizes. The test this time is to eliminate the pirates. Killing one half-Holy King will net you 1 point. Killing a first-level lower-tier Holy King will net you 10 points. Killing an upper tier will net you 20 points. Killing a peak tier will net you 30 points. Lastly, should you be able to kill the pirate chief, a second-level lower-tier Holy King, you will get 50 points. Shi Ruolan continued, the Sea Wolves pirates are very organized and strict. Each of their members will definitely carry a jade token around with them. After you kill them, retrieve the jade tokens and bring them back. Your scores will then be tabulated accordingly. Princess Xuanhuan's eyebrows slightly wrinkled. Clan Master Shi, what are the points used for? That is what I was about to say. It will decide the prizes of this round. Those who obtain more than 100 points receive the following prizes. Firstly, a medium-grade marrow cleansing elixir. Secondly, they may receive a day of personal guidance from one of the elders of the faction. Thirdly, they will become a disciple of the inner sanctum. The facial expressions of the elders suddenly changed. What? The prizes are that incredible. One medium-grade marrow cleansing elixir was equivalent to 100 low-grade marrow cleansing elixirs. It was not something that the 100 vassal clans could produce. In addition, they would receive guidance from one of the faction elders. Not mentioning the amount of eternal guidance one could receive, simply the fact that they could establish some form of ties with the elders was enough to make the 100 vassal clans vie for it. The most shocking prize was the third prize, to directly become a disciple of the inner sanctum. Among the 100 vassal clans, every 5 years, more than 1,000 disciples would attempt the entrance exam. Yet, no more than 3 were able to make it every time. There was not even one who had made it into the inner sanctum. The difference between the inner and outer sanctum of the Lixian faction was that the outer sanctum disciples would have to undertake all the chores of the factions, and would have to serve the disciples of the inner sanctum. Moreover, the number of resources they received was extremely minimal. It was hard for them to make a name for themselves, and level 2 Holy King was usually the limit of their cultivation. The Li family was ranked 30th, but only Li Guang had barely scraped into the inner sanctum. Yet now, with just one test, a person could enter the inner sanctum. Should one enter the inner sanctum, it could change one's fate in life, and decide the fate of the whole family clan. Before Shi Ruolan turned her back to leave, she announced one last thing. In addition, we have received news that, after the Sea Wolves pirates have raided a city, they distribute the loot and search for new targets. As such, it will be highly unlikely for them to be congregated. As a result, how many people you kill, how many points you accumulate in the 1 month, and whether you may enter the inner sanctum will be purely based on your individual ability. After 1 month, report to the External Affairs Division. You all will have 1 day's time to prepare. Tomorrow, someone from the faction will bring you all to the place where the Sea Wolves pirates are hiding. After she had left, the crowd discovered an extremely pertinent question. What happened if they failed to annihilate the Sea Wolves pirates, but still earned over 100 points? Would they be disqualified? If that were the case, they were ultimately unable to avoid facing off with those terrifying Holy King pirates. Su Yu's eyes were determined. Even though it would be tough, it was worth a shot. For the second round of the exam, Su Yu had collected the most points. Not only did he obtain 5 low-grade marrow cleansing elixirs, but he had also obtained the right to enter the depository of scriptures. Adding to the 6 low-grade marrow cleansing elixirs he had gotten from the previous round, he had a total of 11 low-grade marrow cleansing elixirs. Half a day later, an emissary erected a great formation and brought the remaining 25 people into the Lu Xian faction, settling them down in the outer sanctum area. You are Su Yu. Come with me, I'll bring you to the depository of scriptures. The emissary turned his gaze to Su Yu. Amid the envious eyes of the others, Su Yu followed him and left. The depository of scriptures was heavily guarded. After multiple rounds of inspection, Su Yu was finally able to enter. May I ask if I am allowed to read the tiers of the cultivation technique? At the entrance stood a gentle and graceful lady around 30 years old, who was reading an old book attentively. Her slender figure appeared to be too thin, as if she had received the tender care of those around her. Her hair flew in the air, along with the blowing winds. Her figure swayed slightly as though she was a light willow branch. It was extremely mesmerizing. Hearing Su Yu, the lady slightly raised her head. Su Yu was momentarily shocked. The lady's figure was extremely beautiful, but her face was extremely disfigured. Her face looked like it had been attacked by a vicious poison, which had completely destroyed her looks. Her face was completely charred and hideously scary. Had Su Yu not possessed extraordinary willpower, he would have let out a shriek of shock. Our face was not much different from ghosts and monsters. Had it been at night, it could definitely scare a person to death. Had it been due to an act of revenge, Su Yu felt pity for her. In his past life, he had met many ladies who had their looks destroyed by acid, destroying their entire lives as well. His eyes revealed a sliver of sympathy as Su Yu nodded his head apologetically. "Lady, sorry to disturb, may I ask what type of? If you are capable enough, you may read whatever books you want." The lady replied in an annoyed tone, interrupting his sentence. Her temperament was sullen as well, due to capturing the sliver of sympathy from Su Yu's eyes. Su Yu pouted, but he sensed she had seen his pitiful look, so he did not make a fuss over it. Reservations still in his heart, Su Yu took a step forward. Suddenly, it was as though he had been crushed by multiple mountains. Crunch. With a slight stagger, Su Yu's knees gave in, causing him to almost be crushed under the pressure. Su Yu lightly sighed. It was difficult to balance his body, and both his legs tried to support his body unsteadily. Su Yu was struck dumb with astonishment. Amidst the depository of scriptures, was there actually some sort of heavy pressure formation? Su Yu forcibly tried to stabilize himself as he looked around. He realized that the depository of scriptures only had one level. Su Yu was standing on the outermost layer. A row of book racks was lined up from the entrance to the deepest part of the depository. As it deepened, the number of books gradually decreased. Casually flipping open a cultivation technique manual near the entrance, it was at least a deity-level cultivation technique. In terms of power, there were many manuals which were definitely not beneath icy hardcore. Gazing across the depository, there were more than 1,000 deity-level cultivation technique manuals. As expected of the Lixian faction, the manuals they possessed were extremely terrifying. Su Yu was no longer interested in deity-level cultivation techniques and he stumbled inward with much difficulty. With every step he took, the pressure intensified by one notch. On his way, Su Yu almost vomited blood as his innards trembled greatly. The immense pain was unbearable. Yet, he had barely made his way past the 1/4 mark of the depository. Su Yu endured the pressure to his limit. The good thing was, Su Yu could faintly see several remnants of a volume, which had all been destroyed to various degrees. This was the rumored Lixian faction's legacy-level cultivation technique. Crunch. It was difficult for Su Yu to move his feet, but he had finally arrived near his destination. Poof. Su Yu could no longer hold it in and he puked a mouthful of blood. His innards shook immensely. He had sustained light injuries. At that moment, it was difficult for him to even move a finger. Both his knees trembled greatly and he was crushed flat to the ground. He had to quickly take off with one of the cultivation techniques and leave that place as soon as possible. Suddenly, Su Yu chanced his eyes upon Thousand Thread Mantra. It was the legacy-level cultivation technique that before Li Guang died, he had reminded Su Yu to read time and again. However, right as Su Yu was about to grab it, he saw another remnant volume which was pleasing to the eyes and had an extremely simplistic introduction. Glazed Ice Flame, Ice Attribute Legacy-Level Cultivation Technique. Although the last tier had been destroyed, it still had the first and second tier. That cultivation technique allowed the user to solidify the surrounding cold air. The glazed cold air would cause the surroundings to turn extremely cold. Nothing in the world could defend against it. After reaching a considerably high level, its force triumphed over normal legacy-level cultivation techniques. It was only beneath the immortal-level cultivation techniques. However, it was extremely difficult to comprehend. Even for those with relatively good insight, it would take 10 years to attain lower tier, 50 years to attain upper tier, and 100 years to attain peak tier. Even those with exceptional insight would require 5 years for lower tier, 20 years for upper tier, and 50 years for peak tier. Those who chose to cultivate the technique needed self-control and an understanding of their limitations. Although its force was extremely great, the difficult comprehension required was much higher than regular legacy-level cultivation techniques, which caused most people to avoid that manual with fear. Su Yu's pupils dilated. Icy Hardcore had been perfected and trained to the limit. However, its power was starting to fall behind his foes. This legacy-level cultivation technique was an ice attribute, and its great strength made it suitable for Su Yu to practice. Just as he was about to grab the book, a cold grunt could be heard coming from the entrance. It was the sound of the ugly lady. The Divine Nine Dragon Cauldron. Chapter 107, Divine Ice Ancient Kingdom. You may read any of the deity-level cultivation techniques, but for legacy-level cultivation techniques, you may only read one book at a time. Offenders will be immediately persecuted. The disfigured lady had not thought that Su Yu would actually make it to the legacy-level cultivation techniques. As such, she had only mentioned that hidden rule upon seeing Su Yu reach that area. Su Yu was annoyed. Previously, when he inquired, her only reply was that as long as one had the ability, he could read any amount of books. Yet, now she said that legacy-level cultivation techniques were an exception. When trained by a holy king, Thousand Traces Code could expand the capacity of one's spiritual energy. Glazed Ice Flame, on the other hand, possessed an extreme amount of destructive force, and could greatly raise one's strength. Su Yu was in a dilemma, unsure of how to choose between the two. Since you are about to achieve a breakthrough into the Holy King's realm, the obvious choice would be Thousand Traces Code. Spiritual energy is the foundation of the Holy King's power. With a stronger foundation, the strength of any cultivation technique would naturally increase as well. Blindly pursuing a stronger cultivation technique would be akin to focusing on a fancy toy and neglecting the essentials. The disfigured woman paused for a moment. Su Yu thought for a while, before grabbing the Glazed Ice Flame manual. What the disfigured woman said was indeed true. Spiritual energy was the foundation of a holy king's strength. Strengthening that foundation would invariably aid in raising one's overall strength. However, everything had an order of importance and urgency. A Thousand Traces Code was only effective in honing the spiritual energy levels of holy kings. With Su Yu's current spirit energy realm, he wasn't too concerned. However, Su Yu was about to sail the seas and engage in a life-or-death battle with the Holy King pirates. With his life in such a precarious situation, he needed to focus on getting stronger. Hence, he chose Glazed Ice Flame. Where did you come from? I've already told you that building a strong foundation is the key to strength. Yet, you chose to neglect the essentials. You are beyond teaching. The disfigured woman chided him. Su Yu's mind was filled with anger. Although his self-restraint was considerably good, being provoked by the same woman 3 times would anger a man made of clay. With slight unhappiness, Su Yu cried, "Who are you to care?" Without turning his head, Su Yu turned around and left. The disfigured woman stared at Su Yu's figure and pointed a finger at the emissary. What is his name? Inner sanctum or outer sanctum? The emissary was already sweating profusely. Both his knees lost strength as he knelt on the ground. Carefully, he replied, "Second elder, he is Su Yu. He came in first in this year's recruitment exam." Su Yu, HMPH. The disfigured woman was actually one of Lixian faction's 10 great supreme elders, and she was the senior second elder. Su Yu was unaware of her identity, though. He returned to his temporary room and consumed the low-grade marrow-cleansing elixirs. One of those was enough to help him achieve a breakthrough, from level 9 upper tier to level 9 peak tier. What could 11 elixirs do? Was it possible for Su Yu to achieve a breakthrough into the Holy King realm in one shot? With much anticipation, Su Yu consumed the elixirs on the spot. Time passed quickly. Dawn had arrived when Su Yu opened his eyes begrudgingly, filled with disappointment. With a small gesture, a sliver of weak spiritual energy surrounded his fingertip. How silly of me. If it was that easy to achieve a breakthrough into Holy King realm, Li Konghui would not have remained at a half-Holy King after all these years. Su Yu laughed at himself. However, the combined effects of 11 low-grade marrow-cleansing elixirs were still shocking. Su Yu had finally attained the half-Holy King realm. Not only was he able to materialize vital energy, he was able to produce a sliver of weak spiritual energy. Although the spiritual energy was weak, infusing it with his martial arts learning would still raise its power by 30%. Should I meet Wu Pangyun again, he'll have to work for a tie. Su Yu was extremely confident. As for Glazed Ice Flame, Su Yu had attempted to comprehend it for half a day. With the acceleration of time by 200 times, it was equivalent to 3 full months. Yet, what dumbfounded Su Yu was that he actually comprehended only a sliver of it. In the past, even when he tried comprehending Purple Star Thunderbolt, he had still been able to make more progress. The comprehension difficulty of Glazed Ice Flame was indeed beyond his expectations. It was simply not a cultivation technique meant for ordinary people. The only unknown was whether its destructive force was as powerful as described, making it superior to other legacy-level techniques. Looking at the time, Su Yu got up and arrived at the doorsteps of the External Affairs Division. The 25 people were more or less assembled. Su Yu was last to arrive. To arrive so late, I thought that you had already fled in fear after hogging the limelight you wanted, Lu Guang said cynically. His eyes were constantly assessing Su Yu. Wu Pangyun and many other half-holy kings held the same look in their eyes. They had enviously guessed exactly what type of legacy-level cultivation technique Su Yu had obtained from the depository of scriptures. Su Yu shot a look of indifference at Lu Guang. If you think that it is regretful to be unable to fight me the day before, I can grant your wish right away. SSSSs. A delicate and beautiful lotus flower quietly rotated in Su Yu's palm. Its destructive power was extremely frightening. Lu Guang's expression slightly stiffened and he forcibly swallowed a mouth of saliva. How could he possibly hope to match a blow that even Wu Pangyun was unable to match? This place is within the boundaries of the faction. Personal fights are prohibited. You. Stop being so arrogant, Lu Guang growled. But, deep down, he had already admitted defeat. Those in the crowd silently shook their heads. If he was going to admit defeat so quickly, then he should have kept control of his emotions. Stop. A middle-aged man, whose cultivation level was unable to be deciphered, shouted. Poof. The purple lotus in Su Yu's palm disappeared into thin air. As he shot a faint glance at Su Yu, the middle-aged man took out 25 jade pendants expressionlessly, one for each of you. You are to carry it around with you at all times so that the faction can monitor your whereabouts, and render assistance in the nick of the time. Wu Pangyun happily grabbed one pendant. Thank you, Deputy Clan Master Keen. Oh, was this the Deputy Clan Master of the External Affairs Division? Su Yu thoughtfully grabbed one jade pendant. After a moment, a giant blue bird flew overhead. It was actually the same gigantic beast which had ferried Chia Jingyu and Xiana to the Xuanhuan continent. That bird was able to travel 1,000 miles in a day. Its speed was extremely fast. After flying for half a day, it arrived at the deepest parts of the vast ocean. Occasionally, there would be some small islands decorating the surroundings. Desolate, the islands had no signs of a single person within 1,000 square miles. Within a 1,000-mile radius from here are the common locations for the Sea Wolves pirates. From now on, your fate is highly dependent on your own abilities and luck. 1 month from now, I will come here to fetch all of you. That is if you are still alive. Leaving him atop a small island, the Deputy Clan Master King got onto the gigantic bird and left. A line of people looked at each other, clueless and unsure of what to do. Wu Pangyun shot a glance at Lu Guang and Princess Yunyan. The two of you, how about following me? Lu Guang and Princess Yunyan's eyes suddenly lit up. Without thinking, they immediately nodded their head. All right. Wu Pangyun's strength was extremely great. Should they form a team with him, it would greatly reduce the danger of any risks. Glancing towards Su Yu, Princess Yunyan blinked her clear eyes. Junior Su Yu, why not you join us as well? Su Yu shot a glance back. Wu Pangyun's viciousness was enough to drive Su Yu insane, not to mention Lu Guang. Just as he was about to shake his head and reject her, Wu Pangyun sneered coldly, him. Although his strength is remarkable, he is still not at the Holy King realm. Hence, he will be unable to engage in drawn-out battles. Should he join us, he will become a burden to us sooner or later. It's me and him, Princess Yunyan. Pick. Princess Yunyan was slightly startled before she laughed at her own foolishness. The two of them were like blood and oil. How could she have ever thought those two could work on a team? Princess Xuanhuan contemplated for a brief moment. In terms of strength, Su Yu was by no means weaker than Wu Pangyun. Moreover, in contrast to the vicious Wu Pangyun, Princess Yunyan was definitely more fond of Su Yu. However, after weighing the pros and cons, she ultimately chose Wu Pangyun, thanks to one single reason: Wu Pangyun had come from the third family clan of the 100 vassal families. They had previously met before and were acquainted. On the other hand, Su Yu mysterious, and she wasn't entirely sure she could trust him. Junior Su Yu, do be careful, Princess Yunyan bowed apologetically. Those who are strong will receive much help, while the incompetent are destined to be alone. It's only natural. Su Yu, you best look out for yourself, Wu Pangyun gloated. Left with no other choice, Su Yu shrugged his shoulders. All of you too, keep a lookout for one another. Su Yu was the first to leave all by himself, a lone wolf. Overestimating his power, sooner or later, will definitely cause him hardship, Lu Guang muttered. Several days later, out at sea, Su Yu attempted to materialize his vital energy as wings. With a flap of both his wings, Su Yu flew into the clouds. Hiding amid them, Su Yu got a bird's eye view of the happenings on the ground. He was able to clearly see everything within a 100-mile radius. Suddenly, a small black dot appeared. As Su Yu drifted together with the clouds, he arrived right above the black spot. Utilizing his immensely precise eyes, his facial expression turned stiff momentarily. The small black dot was actually a large boat with a pirate flag with a picture of a sea wolf. It was, without a doubt, the Sea Wolves pirates. Focusing, Su Yu saw there were as many as 10 half-holy kings. Moreover, there was even a first-level lower-tier holy king. Su Yu tensed. Should that first-level lower-tier holy king be able to utilize legacy-level cultivation techniques, it would be extremely difficult for Su Yu to deal with him. On top of that, there were 10 other half-holy kings. The situation at hand was indeed very difficult to handle. The only thing that comforted Su Yu was that the entire boat of people was not paying attention. They appeared to be trying to retrieve something from the water. High up in the sky, Su Yu lowered his head and focused harder. The seabed in the 10 square miles surrounding the boat was actually shaped like a massive palm print. Under the blue seawater, it was extremely dark. As if its depth was immeasurable, it appeared to be slowly swallowing the pirate boat. Yet another big palm print. Su Yu breathed heavily. That same palm print from the Xuanhuan island was here too. At that moment, cries of joy could be heard from the pirate ship below. It's coming up. The pirates were shouting excitedly as if they had discovered an extremely rare treasure. Swoosh. The Holy King, who had been inside the cabin, flew out. His face was extremely agitated. Ha ha ha. Heavens have eyes. The legendary Divine Ice Ancient Kingdom's treasure, which had been handed down since ancient times, has finally been discovered by us, the Sea Wolves pirates. Divine Ice Ancient Kingdom. Su Yu had such a thought. Could it be that this palm print had also once destroyed a civilization? Dong. A large copper coffin was carried on board the ship by 4 half-holy kings. It was obvious that the copper coffin had been buried for a very long time, evident from all the rust. As they dragged the coffin aboard, the lid was jerked ajar. A layer of terrifying coldness began overflowing from within it. SSSSSs. The 4 half-holy kings who were carrying the coffin were instantly turned into ice sculptures. Their lives had been instantly extinguished. Su Yu's was shocked. A sliver of cold air capable of obliterating 4 half-holy kings. Crack. The residual waves of cold air shot out in all directions. The gigantic boat, with the copper coffin in the center, was instantly frozen. Ah! The Holy King gritted his teeth and decisively chopped off his frozen arm. Only by doing so was he able to survive such a precarious life or death situation. All of you step back. Don't get too close. The Holy King's face was pained, his eyes terrified. The half-holy kings who managed to survive turned immensely pale, swallowing forcefully. Lord Baigu, this. What exactly is inside this coffin? A half-holy king shuddered as he stared at the copper coffin in fright. The Holy King Pirate, Baigu, was stern. Within the copper coffin lies the divine artifact wielded by the Divine Ice Ancient Kingdom's Emperor, Divine Ice Threads. Baigu's eyes were filled with a deep glow. It is merely a silk thread, but it contains the power of extreme cold. It once destroyed an entire country overnight. The number of holy kings who have died at its hands is more than 10,000. It is even rumored that it killed a Dragon Realm opponent. All of you step back and don't touch it. Immediately, bring it back to the island. We'll hand it over to Lord Chief to handle. This time, we have done a meritorious service, Baigu said extremely excitedly. However, just as the pirates were about to thaw the cold ice and prepare to set sail, boom! A purple figure dropped on top of the ice-cold copper coffin from the sky. The cold air, which was even able to kill off holy kings, failed to inflict any damage to him at all. His silver hair danced in the air, and his purple clothes floated around him while he stood on top of the Divine Ice Ancient Kingdom's copper coffin. The ice-cold air surrounded his body, as if he were an emperor from the Divine Ice Ancient Kingdom had traveled through time. An ancient kingdom's ancient artifact. Since you all are too afraid to touch it, it would be disrespectful of me to refuse this ancient artifact. By the way, I also need to borrow your lives. Su Yu's clear and cold voice was cruel and icy as if he was the Divine Ice Emperor. The Divine Nine-Dragon Cauldron. Chapter 108, World-Obliterating Black Light. Baigu's eyes narrowed. Are you a human or a ghost? Even he was shocked for a brief moment. The dead don't get to ask questions, Su Yu said coldly. Swoosh. In a quick flurry of movement, he flew toward the two nearest half-holy kings. Ice and Thunder Feast. A purplish-white light appeared, destroying everything in its path. Having been infused with a sliver of weak spiritual energy, Su Yu's power increased by 30%. Boom. Poof. The chest of the half-holy king pirate had been blown to smithereens. He didn't even have time to scream before he died on the spot. After infusing his moves with spiritual energy, Su Yu's power reached another level. Attack. Baigu pupils contracts, he could not help but shudder with fear. Alongside the remaining 5 half-holy kings, they encircled Su Yu. Bam! Piak! The combined strength of the 5 holy kings gave birth to a strike which encompassed all of their powers. That destructive power of that strike was immeasurable. Su Yu's eyes remained calm and collected as a purple lotus flower rotated in the middle of his palm. As it swayed beautifully, it was like a lotus-clothed, beautiful lady. Yet within it, there was an immense destructive power, the power of thunder flames. After infusing it with a sliver of weak spiritual energy, a purple light appeared, flickering off Su Yu's handsome features. Purple Star Thunderbolt. Boom! The loud sound of the purple thunder reverberated across the sky as if it was about to obliterate the world. It caused a great tremor in the heavens and shocked the boundless clouds. The gigantic boat beneath his feet shook, heaving and dipping amid the waves. It was unable to endure such a destructive force. Legacy-level cultivation technique. Baigu felt terror wrap around his brain as the cold air beneath his feet continued to rise. The 5 half-holy kings had been massacred on the spot. 1 palm was enough to kill 5 half-holy kings. It's just you now, Su Yu looked at Baigu calmly. Baigu had lost an arm and did not possess any legacy-level cultivation techniques. His expression instantly changed, and he attempted to flee via air. You really think you can escape? Su Yu chased after him. Purple Star Thunderbolt. Another purple lotus flower materialized and struck the back of Baigu. Baigu could practically feel his soul leaving his body. Turning around, he gathered his entire body's worth of spiritual energy in a bid to block the attack. Boom! Ah! Baigu was like a large rock, drawing a beautiful arc in the sky before he landed on the gigantic boat. His chest had been turned into a bloody pulp, he could not stop howling in immense pain. As expected of a holy king, he was far tougher than a martial artist. The 5 half-holy kings had died from merely 1 palm. Yet Baigu was able to survive it with non-lethal injuries. Swoosh! As Su Yu descended, his eyes contained a green pearl of light, emitting a green glow. Ah! After a brief moment, Bai Gu rose, nervous and afraid. His eyes were conflicted, fighting the soul control technique. Su Yu sighed. As expected, the deity-level cultivation technique, infernal demon pupils, no longer has any more use. Bai Gu was not completely controlled. He still struggled against Su Yu's orders. Controlling a first-level lower-tier Holy King was infernal demon pupils' limit. Collect all the jade pendants and bring them to me, Su Yu instructed as he headed toward the copper coffin. With one hand on the lid of the copper coffin, a coldness pierced through Su Yu's bones and rushed into his body. Dong! Dong! His icy heart core beat frantically as it greedily absorbed all the cold energy within Su Yu's body. Su Yu's cultivation appeared to fluctuate faintly, showing signs of improvement. The icy heart core had absorbed the cold air in the atmosphere, causing Su Yu's cultivation to improve drastically. The cold air present was a terrifying thing for normal people. Yet, for Su Yu, it was actually a form of nourishment. Upon opening the lid of the copper coffin, a burst of cold air shot forth in all directions. All the surrounding seawater had all solidified into ice. The gigantic battleship was turned into a giant ice sculpture. Bai Gu's face instantly changed. After he finished collecting the jade pendants, he flew up high into the air, extremely afraid. The purple-robed, silvered-haired Su Yu looked like he was an immortal king. He was the only living thing unaffected by the icy, deathly cold world. Su Yu gazed inside the copper coffin. Inside it, there was the frozen corpse of a woman. Although many years had passed, the corpse seemed more asleep than dead. It was a demure and dignified middle-aged lady. There was a crown on her head, and her hand was holding a staff. From the looks of it, she must have been a leading figure in her nation, most likely an unparalleled queen of her times. Sweeping his gaze across her, he fixated his eyes on her right thumb. A crystal ring was there, emitting a faint glow. Waves of cold air were overflowing from it. The cold air inside the copper coffin all came from this crystal ring. That ring is the divine ice threads. Su Yu was puzzled. There was only a ring, no actual thread in sight. When he was at the sanctuary, Su Yu had obtained the entwined dragon silk. As it was coiled on top of a black jade ring, it was undetectable by the naked eye. This was only a ring though, with no sign of divine ice threads. Had it been destroyed over the countless years? Master, that ring is called the divine ice ring. Inside it, there is a hollow space. Within that space, the divine ice threads can be found. Bai Gu explained. A ring that could bend time and space to hold things. Su Yu was extremely shocked. There were rumors that the ring of space contained enough space to store all creations of Earth within it. But those were just rumors. This was a ring that actually had a fist-sized amount of space within it. It must have been a divine artifact. Moreover, it contained the divine ice threads. SSSSs. The purple thunder flames jumped about, some landing on top of the ice sculpture and gradually melting the layers of ice. Senior, sorry if I have offended you in any way. Su Yu put his palms together and apologetically showed his respect. He waited for the ice to melt before taking off the divine ice ring. The mysterious cold assaulted Su Yu's body and attempted to devour everything. The cold was so strong that a layer of thin ice formed on the surface of Su Yu's hand. Bai Gu shuddered at the sight of it. Had it been any ordinary person, holding such an item would immediately freeze them to death. But icy heart core constantly absorbed the cold air. As such, his palm had turned back to normal. Wearing the divine ice ring, Su Yu's confidence doubled. During the battle with the Slayer King in the Evil Forest, the entwined dragon silk had been completely destroyed. Now that he had obtained an ancient artifact, it made up for his loss. What is the backstory of the Divine Ice Ancient Kingdom? Aside from you all, have any other people discovered it? Su Yu asked. Bai Gu shook his head. We only knew from a treasure map that the Divine Ice Ancient Kingdom was underwater. Following the treasure map led us to this place. Other than us, I'm afraid no one else knows of it. According to the rumors, the Divine Ice Ancient Kingdom was an extremely powerful country during ancient times. It was filled with experts and had a bustling population. However, due to some unknown reasons, it was mysteriously destroyed in a single night, causing it to disappear from history. Baigu was puzzled. If that was the case, it was highly possible that there were more treasures in the ruins of the Divine Ice Ancient Kingdom. The Divine Ice Thread was an ancient artifact from the Divine Ice Ancient Kingdom. There's also a Divine Ice Hall underwater. It is said to be the cultivation venue for the experts of the Divine Ice Ancient Kingdom. Seeing that it is rather well preserved, there must be some remaining treasure. The disappointing thing is, it is guarded by a second-level Holy King Sea Beast, and thus, no one can enter. Baigu finished. Second-level Holy King Sea Beast. Su Yu gasped in astonishment. Without any further thought, Su Yu immediately cancelled his plan to personally go underwater and look for treasures. Su Yu had no chance against a second-level Holy King Sea Beast. He would be fish food before he knew it. Hand over the jade tokens, Su Yu instructed. Baigu threw over the jade tokens. Baigu suddenly saw a vaguely large, moving shadow underneath the waters where Su Yu was standing. Its shape was half a mile long. It was big enough to devour the entire big ship. Ah, you're beneath your feet. Baigu's lips shivered as he stuttered. His eyes were terrified. Su Yu's heart skipped a beat. A terrifying aura erupted from the sea beneath Su Yu's feet. That terrifying sensation turned Su Yu's whole body stiff, as his heart thumped madly. He was like a level 1 martial artist standing before a level 9 martial artist, absolutely crushed by immense despair. Swoosh. Without any hesitation, Su Yu fled towards the sky without looking back. Swish. Su Yu swiftly grabbed the jade token in Baigu's hand. Baigu was too shocked to reply. Though he had started off farther away, he was lagging behind Su Yu. After he regained his senses, Baigu was terrified. It was as though his spirit was about to leave his body. He followed Su Yu and fled for his life. Split up. Don't follow me, Su Yu muttered. Escaping together would only give the enemy the chance to kill them both at once. Ah. However, just as Su Yu's words had just left his mouth, a loud shriek could be heard from behind him. Turning his head around to look, Su Yu turned numb. A ray of black light shot from the water, piercing Baigu's body. Baigu turned instantly into black ash. Not a single trace of his corpse nor his bones were left. A round sea beast emerged from the waters. Its width was over 1,000 feet. Its entire body was soft, very similar to a lump of rotten mud. The beast also had a total of 100 pairs of eyes. It was those eyes which had shot out the black light, killing Baigu without a trace. That was the sea beast guarding the Divine Ice Hall. Swoosh. Swoosh. Multiple rays of black light pierced the sky and fired toward the fleeing Su Yu. Su Yu dodged in a fluster. In his moment of carelessness, a ray of black light brushed past the wings made of vital energy on Su Yu's back. SSSSSs. The vital energy dissipated into thin air. Su Yu stumbled. He was about to crash. As if seizing the opportunity, 10 rays of terrifying black light were shot towards Su Yu. Su Yu's heart thumped madly as he faced death. As a last-ditch effort, Su Yu gave up on using his vital energy. Instead, he changed to using floating light shadow and floated freely in midair. Swoosh. Swoosh. Precariously, Su Yu had dodged most of the rays of black light. However, a ray of black light had been positioned extremely craftily and was aimed directly at Su Yu's chest. He had no way of avoiding it. Purple Star Thunderbolt. Su Yu shouted as he channeled all his spiritual energy into this one move in an attempt to defend against that black light. Boom. The purple lotus flower exploded with a loud bang, shaking the black light. Poof. Although the black light was strong, it weakened from the attack. Upon colliding with the purple thunder, it finally dissipated. However, a sliver of residual black light had splashed onto Su Yu's body. Poof. Su Yu's inner organs trembled immensely as though he had been heavily assaulted by a mountain, causing him to spit out a mouthful of blood. His body, on the other hand, was like a cannonball as he was blasted backward. In an instant, Su Yu had sustained severe injuries. However, borrowing the power of that blast, Su Yu managed to escape from the sea beast's attacking range. He took the opportunity to escape into the clouds, fleeing with his heavily injured body. After an hour, Su Yu descended on a deserted island. Leaning against a giant rock, Su Yu panted heavily. His face was extremely pale and revealed a pained expression. Furthermore, the bleeding in his mouth showed no sign of stopping. This was the first time in Su Yu's entire life where he sustained such a heavy injury. But if anyone knew that Su Yu had survived a blow from a second-level Holy King, they would have praised Su Yu for his exceptionally good luck. Had he been like Bai Gu and hesitated for a split second, it was highly likely that Su Yu would have suffered the same fate. Having experienced a narrow escape, Su Yu would most likely be unable to fight for the next 10 days. As he sat down with his legs crossed, Su Yu circulated his spiritual energy in a bid to gradually condition his body to recover from his injuries. Swoosh! However, right at that moment, 3 figures descended from the sky. A forceful aura accompanied them. Su Yu contracted his pupils and his heart fluttered for a moment. Could it be that the pirates had chased him here in pursuit? "Hey, it's Junior Su," a melodiously elegant voice asked, a bit shocked. It was Princess Xuanhuan. They were Wu Pangyun's small team. They had mistaken Su Yu for a pirate. Slowly retracting the spiritual energy in her hand, Princess Xuanhuan took a step forward and examined Su Yu's condition. She was shocked. "Junior Su, how did you get these severe injuries?" Wu Pangyun and Lu Guang hesitated for a moment before they grudgingly retracted their spiritual energy. "We thought it was a solitary pirate. What a letdown." Wu Pangyun lightly spit in disdain as he cursed his misfortune. On the other hand, Lu Guang assessed Su Yu from head to toe. In the past, wasn't someone full of arrogance and insisted on being alone? How did my great hero become such a loser dog now? He ridiculed. Princess Xuanhuan shot a glance at Lu Guang before taking out several healing elixirs from her clothes. "Junior Su, this is a rejuvenating elixir. It can aid in your recovery." Su Yu was momentarily stunned, before he received it gratefully. "Thank you, Princess. What type of foe did you meet that can cause such injuries? Don't tell me you met a first-level upper-tier Holy King opponent." Princess Xuanhuan asked seriously. Lu Guang laughed. "Ha! You think too highly of him. Should he have met a first-level upper-tier Holy King, with their viciousness and actual combat experience, there is no way he would still be alive." Su Yu pretended not to hear him and sighed while looking at Princess Xuanhuan. "I encountered a small group of Seawolves pirates. There were 10 half-Holy Kings and 1 first-level lower-tier Holy King. That was how I sustained such heavy injuries." Princess Xuanhuan was extremely shocked. "What? You had actually encountered so many Seawolves pirates? 10 half-Holy Kings and 1 first-level lower-tier Holy King?" Had she or Lu Guang faced with such a lineup alone, they would have undoubtedly died. Even Wu Pangyun would have more or less sustained some severe injuries. But, with your abilities, if you wanted to escape, you would not have been so injured. Don't tell me you wanted to slay them all. Princess Xuanhuan was extremely smart. She cut straight to the chase. Su Yu cautiously swept a look at Lu Guang and Wu Pangyun, before he nodded his head helplessly. "Yes, it is more or less like that." Hearing that Su Yu had slain all of them by himself, Princess Xuanhuan was extremely shocked. Lu Guang's ridiculing face slightly stiffened, before it turned serious. To actually injure Su Yu to such an extent. On the other hand, Wu Pangyun's tone was filled with envy. "Humph. Your luck is still as good as it was. To actually encounter so many Seawolves pirates, and to survive." In the 5 days since they had teamed up, the 3 of them had met a mere 10 Seawolves pirates, and they were all half-Holy Kings. Su Yu's individual harvest was even more than the 3 of them combined. "Let's go." Wu Pangyun could not be bothered to look at Su Yu any longer and he flew away. Lu Guang also stood up to leave. Before he left, his eyes flickered viciously. Junior Su Yu, be careful, Princess Xuanhuan said comfortingly. Then she flew away, chasing after the other two. Su Yu shook his head. Had he told them that his injuries had been inflicted by that terrifying second-level Holy King, they would have never believed him. As for the Sea Wolves pirates, they hadn't made a single scratch. After swallowing the rejuvenation elixir, Su Yu's eyes lit up and he immediately left the small island. After half a day, a figure circled around the small island in search of something, before he decided to descend. HMPH. Such a crafty rascal. He indeed escaped. Lu Guang snorted angrily. Su Yu had possessed 11 jade tokens. Lu Guang was naturally envious of so many points. In addition, Su Yu had sustained heavy injuries. There was no better time to kill him. While his team was resting, he had taken the opportunity to pretend that he wanted to gather information on the whereabouts of the Sea Wolves pirates. In actuality, he was after Su Yu's life and his jade tokens. He and Su Yu's deep feud could speak for itself. He had missed previous opportunities to kill him. This time, Su Yu's injured state and collection of tokens was a godsend. Su Yu, however, had seemingly anticipated that someone would take the opportunity to kill him while he was severely injured. Hence, he had fled the island in advance. Count yourself lucky. Lu Guang was extremely angry. As his wings made a vital energy flapped, Lu Guang started to fly towards the horizon. Crash. The sound of crashing waves was suddenly heard. A purple-clothed, silver-haired youth emerged from within the seawaters. With a pair of vast and starry eyes which reflected the universe, his cold tone provoked Lu Guang. Lu Guang, long time no see. I have been waiting here for you. Lu Guang was shocked. Squinting his eyes, his face revealed a hidden joy. With no one around, Lu Guang did not bother to hide his vile motive. Su Yu. You will regret stepping foot onto the Zhenlong continent. Had you remained on Xuanhuan Island, I would not have bothered to look for you. But you just had to send yourself to me. Don't blame me for being ruthless. Su Yu stood with his hands clasped behind his back. Although the heavy injuries he had sustained had not healed, his face revealed an extremely satisfied smile. Coincidentally, I have been wanting to kill you for very long. Had Zhu Rong not interfered time and again, you would have long ago died in my hands. Now, your good luck has been used up. From the moment when he insulted Xiana, Lu Guang's fate was sealed, marked with a death stamp by Su Yu. But Su Yu had not had the chance, until today. Ha ha, how much strength could you possibly have left with such severe injuries? You really think you can kill me? Lu Guang erupted into a laughter murderously. Even with such severe injuries, to kill trash like you was only a matter of raising my hand. Su Yu replied cynically. The Divine Nine Dragon Cauldron. Chapter 109, Reconnecting Internal Blood Energy Channels. Arrogant as always. You're practically disabled from those injuries. If only you weren't around. During the fight of the century, I would have been the undisputed strongest person on Xuanhuan Island if you weren't around. Xiana would have been my woman. This is my life's greatest regret. But now, sending you to your death can at least ease some of my regrets. So, Su Yu, die. This is your fate. Lu Guang shouted angrily, claw of the divine eagle. Infused with spiritual energy, the claw appeared to be that of the ninth heaven eagle. As it rushed downwards, it seemed powerful enough to shred earth and sea. Su Yu was heavily injured. Thus, his current strength was not even 30% of his peak strength. Such a powerful claw would be difficult to take on. However, Su Yu had his own tricks up his sleeves. Divine Ice Thread. Su Yu raised his finger as the divine ice ring emitted extremely cold air. Lu Guang, who was charging forward, momentarily felt a chill run down his spine. His face instantly stiffened. When did you obtain such a horrifying ring? A bad premonition enveloped his heart. There's no need for you to know. Su Yu flicked his finger. SSSSSs. A long, thin thread of crystal clear shot forward alongside a horrifying cold air. Crack. Wherever the thin silk passed, be it the skies, the earth, the rocks, or the river streams. Anything that possessed a form was turned into cold ice. Ah! Lu Guang shrieked in pain. He had realized that things were not going as planned and had barely dodged the attack. However, he still could not avoid being hit by a residual wave of cold air which splashed onto his arm. He watched, terrified, as the cold air crystallized and froze his arm on the spot. It still spread to the other parts of his body like a wildfire. Ah! Suyu! Quick! Quick! Retract your cold air! Lu Guang shrieked in shock. His fear of death clouded his ability to think. SSSSs. A delicate and cold thin silk had wrapped around his waist. Crack! The remaining half of his body was instantaneously turned into cold ice. Suyu! No, we are both from Xuanhuan Island. Why is there a need for us to kill each other? Lu Guang's suave face was filled with fright as he pleaded. Suyu's eyes remained indifferent as he lightly hooked his finger. Die. Had Lu Guang possessed even a sliver of consideration toward their shared roots, he would not have appeared in that place and tried to kill Suyu while he was severely injured. Bam! The divine ice threads, with a tug, shattered the frozen sculpture of Lu Guang, reducing it to countless pieces of crushed ice. Retracting the divine ice threads, Suyu disposed all of the crushed ice into the ocean and immediately left. Half a day later, in a faraway place, Wu Pangyun was extremely gloomy as he laughed coldly. What a brazen guy. Under the pretext of investigating the situation, he escaped and hid from us. Princess Xuanhuan was extremely worried. Hunting and killing the sea wolves pirates was already dangerous. With Lu Guang's escape, their team's strength was further reduced. Why don't we go back and invite Junior Suyu to join our team? Princess Xuanhuan deeply admired Suyu from the bottom of her heart. He will merely burden us. What benefits can he bring to us? Once we encounter danger, he will definitely become dead weight. Wu Pangyun chided coldly. 5 days later, in a certain faraway island, Suyu emerged from the cave, stretching his body as he faced the sunlight. Princess Xuanhuan's elixirs are extremely effective in treating my wounds. The injuries were supposed to have taken 10 days to heal, but they've healed in merely 5 days. I will definitely repay this kindness, Suyu muttered to himself. Suddenly, Suyu reached towards his chest compartment and took out a jade pendant. That jade pendant was distributed by the External Affairs Division in order to accurately determine their location. After contemplating for a short while, Suyu entered the ocean and stuffed the jade pendant into one of the fish's bellies. Looking at the frightened fish from afar, Suyu smiled. My specific whereabouts are better off unknown. Flying into the clouds, Suyu resumed the search for sea wolves pirates. 1,000 miles was not considered a big space to cover. With enough altitude, it was possible for Suyu to scan across the entire area and gain a general understanding of what was happening. Suddenly, Suyu's eyebrows twitched vigorously. Within his sight, there was actually an entire group of people floating in midair. 2 of them were surrounded and being attacked by the remaining group of people. Suyu stealthily approached and, from a distance of 20 miles away, he watched. 2 first-level upper-tier holy kings and 4 first-level lower-tier holy kings were dressed in robes. Their faces looked extremely fierce and ruthless. They were encircling 2 people, Wu Pangyun and Princess Xuanhuan. Wu Pangyun's face was pale. His viciously suave looks had been replaced by one of desperation and fear. A few traces of blood could be seen on his extremely pale face. His robe had been torn in multiple areas, and he had sustained injuries all over his body. His whole body was bleeding profusely. Princess Xuanhuan's body slightly trembled, as she appeared to have expended all of her stamina. Her forehead was full of sweat which damped her silky hair. Her elegant face was filled with bitterness and despair. For the last time, I'm asking you this. Did you 2 kill a sea wolves pirate named Baigu, alongside 10 other half-holy kings from the sea wolves pirates? Their boat was carrying a rare treasure from the divine ice ancient kingdom. Did you snatch it away as well? Among the 2 first-level holy king upper-tier pirates, one was plump like a round ball, but his eyes were fierce and malicious. The other one was lean and short. His skin was tanned, and his face was sinister. The remaining 4 first-level lower-tier holy kings each had a fierce expression as well. Wu Pangyun swallowed the blood in his mouth. We have never seen him before. It must have been someone else. Both Wu Pangyun and Princess Yunyan were able to guess that the 11 people Su Yu had killed were most likely the group of pirates they were looking for. Moreover, the precious treasure of the Divine Ice Ancient Kingdom was likely in Su Yu's possession. But, no matter how they tried to explain, the pirates would never forgive them. Such stubbornness and foolishness. We'll take you down first. The plump Holy King grunted. Swoosh. The plump Holy King and the tan midget attacked Wu Pangyun at the same time. The remaining 4 first-level lower-tier Holy Kings surrounded Princess Yunyan. The 4 of you, go easy on her and don't injure her too badly. I will personally interrogate her later. The tan midget turned his head around and smiled. His malicious eyes gave off a lustful gaze as he assessed Princess Yunyan from head to toe. Exuding an elegant and noble aura, she was like a celestial fairy, banished to the mortal realm. Such elegance, superb looks, and curvaceous figure combined into a splendid lady was indeed a rare sight. A group of sea wolves pirates also lustfully assessed her body from head to toe. She was quite the sight to behold. Princess Yunyan's face was filled with shame and anger, as she gritted her teeth. Don't you dare. Wu Pangyun would get a quick death, but she would be humiliated to death by countless men. Boom. They all exchanged blows in an instant. With the 2 first-level upper-tier holy kings joining hands, Wu Pangyun suffered a crushing defeat and spewed blood from his mouth. With a single palm, he had been pushed back 30 feet, crashing into Princess Yunyan. If Junior Su Yu were around, our situation would not be so dire, Princess Yunyan grumbled. Su Yu's strength rivaled a first-level upper-tier holy king. With him, they would have had a sliver of hope. Hearing that, Wu Pangyun was extremely irritated and coldly chided her in response. You still dare to mention him? Had he not snatched away the precious treasure of the Sea Wolves pirates, they would not have assembled to search for him. Moreover, with his level of ability, how could he be anything but deadweight to us? Princess Yunyan was unable to refute him. Feeling the various unscrupulous gazes of the Sea Wolves pirates, Princess Yunyan resolved to die before falling into their hands. Let's break out of the encirclement and leave this up to luck. Although together, the 2 first-level upper-tier holy kings were still some distance away from them. If they seized the opportunity, they could try to rush past him and escape. Okay, Wu Pangyun agreed, but a vicious look flickered in his eyes. Boom. Ah. Right as Princess Yunyan was preparing to break through the encirclement, a palm struck her from behind. That palm strike had struck her heart, cutting off her internal blood energy channels. It was a severe injury. I can't afford to die, Princess Yunyan, sorry. Wu Pangyun's eyes were vicious. Absolutely cold and ruthless, that palm had pushed Princess Yunyan toward the 2 first-level upper-tier holy kings. Using her as a distraction, Wu Pangyun seized the opportunity to fend off the attacks from the 4 lower-tier holy kings and fled toward the horizon. Hee, such ruthlessness and cruelty. The tanned midget laughed coldly as he looked at Wu Pangyun's fleeing figure. He caught the severely injured Princess Yunyan. The plump pirate sniggered. I'll chase after him. The tanned midget laughed sinisterly. All right, perhaps when you return from capturing him, I will be done too. Grabbing the extremely pale Princess Yunyan, the tanned midget descended into a small island beneath their feet and entered a dark cave. The 4 of you, keep a lookout on the surroundings, and don't let anyone come near. The tanned midget ordered. Swoosh. Immediately, the surroundings of the cave became heavily guarded. No one could interfere with the tanned midget's plans. Princess Yunyan was filled with fear and hatred. I must have been blind, to have chosen Wu Pangyun's group. He was so ruthless and cruel at such a crucial moment, sacrificing her for a chance to escape alive. Princess Yunyan's heart was filled with despair. As her meridians had been severed by Wu Pangyun's blow, the flow of her spiritual energy was disrupted. At that moment, she was no different from any other ordinary mortal woman. Her life and death were no longer controlled by her. Even if she wanted to, she could not die. Tears of fear, hatred, and regret rolled down her cheeks. She was afraid of was her impending, miserable fate. She hated and regretted choosing Wu Pangyun. To be reduced to such a fate, she only had herself to blame. She waited for his awful hands to grab her, but they did not come. Instead, alongside a crack sound, a wave of cold made her heart shudder as it filled the cave. Looking over, a crystal-clear silk thread was wrapped around the tanned midget's neck. A terrifying cold emanated from within the silk thread. The tanned midget, a first-level upper-tier holy king, did not even have the chance to shriek before his entire head turned into ice. Swoosh! Retrieving back the silk thread, the tanned midget fell to the ground, his head shattered into countless ice shards. "Sorry, I'm late," a gentle and apologetic voice murmured. Princess Xuanhuan focused her eyes. Silhouetted against the setting sun, a gallant figure walked over concernedly. The dim sunlight lit up the man's face as if he was a youthful deity from an old story. He was as suave as a deity, with an unparalleled charisma. Her beautiful eyes were momentarily mesmerized. From the voice, Princess Xuanhuan knew it was Su Yu. Yet, for some unexplainable reason, his gaze made her heart skip a beat. In her moment of crisis, when she was down and out, the person who descended from the sky was not her fiancé, but another man altogether. Taking the tanned midget's token, Su Yu kicked away his corpse and knelt on the ground. "Princess Xuanhuan, are your injuries all right? Can you walk?" They could not stay there for long. The first-level upper-tier Holy King was not a big issue. The big issue was that, since the Sea Wolves pirates had reassembled, the first-level peak tier and even the second-level Holy King were not far from there. Princess Xuanhuan regained her senses after sitting, mesmerized. Holding onto the wall for support, she stood up with much difficulty. The slightest of movements would trigger a jolt in her severed internal blood energy channels, causing her face to reveal a pained expression. "I am fine." "Ah." A sharp pain was felt in the area near her heart, causing her stagger. Su Yu managed to grab her slender waist in time. Hesitantly, Su Yu offered an idea. "If Princess Xuanhuan doesn't mind, I can carry you to a safe spot for you to recover." "No, no need." Princess Xuanhuan forced out a smile and put on a brave front. She used up her remaining strength to try and support herself. However, she did not have the strength to leave Su Yu's arms. "Pardon my rudeness." There was not much time left. Su Yu carried Princess Xuanhuan on his back as he generated a gust of wind beneath his feet, exiting the cave. At the entrance to the cave stood four lifelike Holy King ice sculptures. They had been silently killed by Su Yu and had their tokens taken away from them. After half a day, Su Yu and Princess Xuanhuan arrived at another discreet island. "Where is your injury? I can help you check." Putting her down, Su Yu flustered in concern. "No need. The internal blood energy channels near my heart have been severed." Princess Xuanhuan gave a bitter smile and she waved her hand. Her gloomy eyes carried a tinge of sadness. "Severed internal blood energy channels." Su Yu was astonished. He gave her a serious look. "If you don't cure it in time, as time passes, the severed internal blood energy channels will be difficult to reattach and you won't be able to use spiritual energy for the rest of your life." Princess Xuanhuan revealed a bitter look. "I was blind to actually believe Wu Pangyun. I only have myself to blame. Junior Su Yu, you need not care about my injuries. If I remember correctly, if someone else injects spiritual energy into your body, it will help reattach your internal blood energy channels, right? If Princess Xuanhuan trusts me enough, perhaps I can give it a shot," Su said calmly. Su Yu had a sliver of weak spiritual energy, that was enough to heal her injuries. No. Without any hesitation, Princess Xuanhuan rejected Su Yu's offer. She was not close to Su Yu, they were practically strangers. It was simply too hard for her to easily accept Su Yu's kindness. "If you really want to give up, I will not force you," Su Yu sighed, respecting Princess Xuanhuan's intentions. He would not pressure her. But she was giving up on cultivation. She would live her life as a worthless person for the rest of her days. Princess Xuanhuan's heart ached. The competition in Zhenlong continent was extremely harsh. Without any abilities, she knew very well that, if she left the injury to worsen, her fate would be a collection of misery, starting with her giving up on martial arts for the rest of her life. However, she was simply reluctant to receive an outsider's aid so readily. Raising her head, Princess Yunyan looked into Su Yu's eyes. She could not help but ask out of curiosity, "Why are you helping me so much? You have no interest in me, right? Why else would you help me so much?" Su Yu sighed. Not only did this woman possess exceptional class and beauty, she was also very intelligent. In an instant, she had understood that Su Yu had no evil intentions. Otherwise, with her severe injuries, it would be easy for Su Yu to take advantage of her if he wanted to. With a faint expression like the clear winds under a spring moon, Su Yu gave off an exceptionally sincere smile. "I despise being indebted to someone. That time, when I was lonely, injured, and helpless, it was you who helped me out, who gave me elixirs to aid my recovery. Since then, I have been indebted to you. Now that you are in trouble, I am bound by duty to help you." Repay his gratitude. For a mere elixir, Princess Yunyan was momentarily stunned. She had thought of many reasons, just not this one. It was only an elixir. To her, it was merely helping out a fellow exam candidate, something that was naturally expected. Yet, Su Yu had saved her life in return. "Time is scarce. Princess, don't worry too much," Su Yu said sternly. Princess Yunyan stared at Su Yu and revealed a wide smile. "You, Junior Su Yu, are very weird." The Divine Nine Dragon Cauldron. Chapter 110. Dawn of a Catastrophe. Su Yu's clear eyes inspected her wounds and her wounds alone. Extending his hands, Su Yu placed them on Princess Yunyan's chest and fully concentrated on infusing his weak spiritual energy into her body. An hour passed before the internal blood energy channels had finally reconnected. Su Yu's face was pale from the overexhaustion of his spiritual energy. It had placed a considerable burden on his body. Princess Yunyan's trembling eyebrows slightly moved, revealing a pair of embarrassed, teary eyes. She peeked at him through the slit between her eyelids. What greeted her eyes was a clear gaze, free of any distracting thoughts and fully focused on accomplishing the task at hand. She had expected to open her eyes to see Su Yu flushed with embarrassment and lust, but this did not happen. Her uneasy heart calmed. "All right, after 2 more treatments, you may be able to channel spiritual energy on your own to heal your injuries." Su Yu retracted his palm and turned his head around. Princess Yunyan tugged her clothes back into places. Filled with gratitude and deep embarrassment, she thanked Su Yu. Her head was slightly lowered, her posture elegant and beautiful. Su Yu waved his hand. "I am indebted to you, Princess." "Don't mention it. Yunyan will do," Princess Yunyan said softly, biting her lips. Su Yu smiled easily in reply. "Then, Yunyan, call me Su Yu." Su Yu. Princess Yunyan chanted the name once in her heart. She would never forget that day, nor the accompanying embarrassment. After all, he was the first man to touch her. For the next half of the day, the two of them rested on the same spot. Su Yu had caught multiple fish but did not roast them over a fire. Instead, he instantly put out the fire after heating up the floor. Using the residual heat from the ground, he roasted the fish. "Su Yu, why did you put out the fire? Out here, it is very cold at night. Without a fire to keep us warm, it will be hard for us to survive the night." Princess Yunyan was puzzled. She was slightly apprehensive about Su Yu's actions. Had her spiritual energy been present, she could have used it to protect her body from the cold. However, at that moment, she was no different than an ordinary mortal woman. As such, it would be difficult for her to survive the cold at night. "If we light a fire, others may see the smoke," Su Yu said. Princess Yunyan was momentarily shocked. Luckily Su Yu was there to remind her, or else such a fatal, common error would have been made. After satisfying their hunger with the fish, the cold night breeze arrived as expected. SSSS's. Yunyan's face turned ghastly pale as she knelt on the ground. Grabbing her arms, her body trembled. Come down, Yunyan. Looking over, she saw a small hole that Su Yu had dug into the island reef. It could accommodate 2 people if they squeezed, and provided cover from the cold wind. Yunyan's face lit up as she jumped for joy. It was indeed a shelter from the sea breeze. In addition, Su Yu had taken one piece of the reef to cover the hole with, effectively preventing any sea breeze from entering. Relieved, both of them sat down cross-legged. Their knees were in contact with each other's, and they could hear the sound of each other's breaths. Yunyan's face flushed with embarrassment, but she would endure the close contact in order to keep out of the terrible cold. Though, the night chill still managed to seep into their safe haven. Yunyan's body temperature gradually decreased. Hugging her own body tightly, she could not help but shiver. Su Yu was well versed in ice-based cultivation techniques and was therefore unaffected by the cold. Seeing Yunyan's state, Su Yu began to worry about her. She was injured and frail. The stark cold air could seriously jeopardize her chances for survival. Yunyan, come to my side. I will use vital energy to help you stay warm, so that you may survive the night. I promise I'll be very professional. I just want to keep you safe. Yunyan freaked out. To spend the night at Su Yu's side, cuddling till daybreak. It was just too embarrassing for her to consider. No need. Before she could even finish her sentence, she coughed, the sound coming from deep within her chest. Swoosh. Not giving her the opportunity to resist, a big hand pulled her into his arms and her seated beside Su Yu. Waves of vital energy surged forth from within Su Yu's body, dispelling the surrounding cold. No need. Yunyan was flustered and shivered. Su Yu sighed. Sorry, I can't bear to see you freeze to death at night. Yunyan stopped struggling and she turned to stare at Su Yu, an odd expression on her face. It was the first time a guy had made her heart flutter, all from one simple act of kindness. Su Yu sat with his eyes closed. His expression was sincere, quiet and free from any distracting thoughts. Seeing that, Yunyan's heart was eased. I was a knave who used my own yardstick to measure the motives of an upright man. Su Yu is a righteous man. If he had wanted to take advantage of me, he would have done so already. Yunyan laughed at herself. She was like an ordinary mortal. If Su Yu intended to take advantage of her, she would not even have the strength to resist. Moreover, they were entirely alone. He had no need to hide poor intentions if he had any. With heartfelt gratitude, Yunyan's body gradually eased into Su Yu's arms. She indulged herself in the warmth brought about by the vital energy. Not only was the cold in her body dispelled, the warmth spreading through her made her feel at home. Heavily injured and exhausted, she closed her eyes not long after. Unknowingly, she had fallen asleep in Su Yu's arms. Just like a small cat, she snuggled up deeper into Su Yu's arms, revealing a simple yet beautiful smile. The next day, as she opened her eyes joyfully, she discovered that Su Yu's expression was serious. He looked through the gap in the cover and surveyed the surroundings cautiously. What happened? Yunyan whispered. Whoa. A big hand covered her red lips. Su Yu gestured to keep quiet while pointing upward softly, a serious expression on his face. Yunyan's heart was pounding madly. Upon straining her ears to listen, she heard some screaming and shouting. There were currently people flying above their heads. We have thoroughly searched the surrounding 18 islands, but to no avail. A half-holy king stood on the island and reported to a black-robed, one-eyed, burly man. The one-eyed man had a terrifying cultivation base. He was a first-level peak-tier holy king. He was the only first-level peak-tier holy king among the Sea Wolves pirates. His strength was so great that, even if Su Yu had teamed up with Wu Pangyun, Yunyan, and Lu Guang, it would be difficult for them to even block a single move from him. Split up and continue searching. That woman is severely injured and she'll need to recuperate in a dry place. It is highly possible they're hiding. Even if you have to dig, you must find them. To have killed 4 of my first-level lower-tier men, and 1 first-level upper-tier. Unless I skin them and feed them to the dogs, I will not be satisfied. Roger. Lord Bloodhands. The half-holy king said respectfully, before suddenly asking again, then, what about that first level upper-tier holy king who escaped? Of course, search for him as well, you must definitely find him. The one-eyed, burly man's name was Bloodhands. Swoosh. A large group of shadows suddenly flew off in all directions. There were half-holy kings stationed all around within a 500-mile radius. As soon as any figure appeared in the open, they would instantly be notified. Not only had Su Yu snatched the divine Ice Ancient Kingdom's precious treasure, he had also killed several holy kings. This had completely roused the anger and madness of the Sea Wolves pirates, who were currently searching for him with full force. Even after a long time had passed, Yunyan's heart still pounded madly. Looks like before your injuries are completely healed, we can only hide here and refrain from going outside, Su Yu lightly sighed, as his eyes turned serious. Yunyan snapped out of it, her face flushed red with embarrassment. Did she have to stay within Su Yu's arms for the entire time? Yunyan replied in a soft-spoken manner, secretly comforting herself in her mind. Although this was not advantageous to her unblemished reputation, it was far better than falling into the hands of the pirates and being insulted by a group of men. Still, the atmosphere remained awkward. In order to ease the awkwardness, Yunyan tried to look for conversation topics. She suddenly recalled something and slowly asked, Su Yu, don't you think that the Lixian faction entrance examination this time around was extremely unusual? Su Yu nodded his head, as he indeed had his doubts regarding the examination. I can feel it as well. And the suicide mission this time, it definitely doesn't seem right. The problematic part isn't just the suicide mission. Yunyan was from the 100 vassal clans, and therefore was well informed and resourceful. She knew a bit more than Su Yu. From what I gather, the ranked first and second geniuses from the 100 vassal clans already entered the Lixian faction. Aside from through use of some other methods, there were also some exceptional talents who managed to obtain early access to Lixian faction. They are the true geniuses. Compared to them, we are far more common. Su Yu frowned. What you are saying is, the real geniuses have long since been taken in by Lixian faction, while we were sent to accomplish a suicide mission. Yunyan nodded her head. That's right. That's why I suspect, it's very possible that we are merely bait sent by the faction. Perhaps the faction wants to use us, the less talented disciples, to lure out a certain person or force. This mission of hunting and killing pirates is definitely bizarre and unusual. After thinking for a while, Su Yu gradually came to believe her. However, the more he thought about it, the more Su Yu wanted to survive and return. He definitely had to kill Shiruolan and Hanji. After taking in a deep breath, Su Yu muttered, thus, we should begin treating your injuries, as it's not suitable for us to stay in this place for much longer. Yunyan's body trembled as she bit her lip. With her trembling soft white hands, she undid her top, yet again completely revealing her perfect curves to Su Yu. 5 days later, after the last treatment had ended, Yunyan's blushed as she put on her top. In the 5 days she had been and Su Yu had been close, she had become desensitized to his touch. All right, we should prepare to leave here, Su Yu softly said. Leave. Yunyan felt a slight joy in her heart. Yet, she also felt a tinge of disappointment. 5 days of being along with each other, not only was it a tough experience, it was an unforgettable one. All right, Yunyan smiled, dispelling the irrational feelings in her heart. Suddenly though, there was a shout from nearby. Ha ha, little rascal, you're something all right, to be able to hide from me for 5 days. A voice filled with hatred could be heard coming from above their heads. Yunyan was momentarily shocked. We've been discovered. No, shush, Su Yu said sternly. Outside, Wu Pangyun was trying to escape, as his face revealed fright and desperation. That day, he had escaped by the skin of his teeth from the hands of the plump pirate, and then he found a discreet place to recuperate his injuries. However, who would have known that the Sea Wolves pirates would be so mad that they would mobilize their entire force? The underground cave in which he was hiding in had been dug up. This time, no one else can take the fall for you. Die. The plump first level upper tier Holy King shouted angrily. Wu Pangyun was unwilling to take his death lying down. How could he die in a place like this? After letting out an angry battle cry, Wu Pangyun became determined. He stopped trying to escape and turned around, ready to fight. The fight took place right above Su Yu and Yunyan. Boom. A residual wave struck the island reef. The small island reef shook immensely and the coral reef above Su Yu's head suddenly exploded into pieces. They had been discovered. Su Yu's face became serious. Although Wu Pangyun and the pirate were in the midst of the battle, they could vaguely see in the corner of their eyes that there was actually a secret hole underneath their feet. Inside it was one male and female, hugging each other tightly. The female was extremely beautiful, though her face rapidly turned bright red. Her clothes were in a mess, as she was buried deep within the arms of the male. It was not hard to imagine what the couple had been doing just now. Su Yu, Princess Yunyan. Wu Pangyun was immensely shocked and surprised. Quick. The three of us can team up and quickly kill him. Swoosh. Swoosh. The two figures flew out from the island reef, but they did not intend to help Wu Pangyun. While the plump first level upper tier Holy King was preoccupied with Wu Pangyun, they seized the opportunity and fled. Su Yu. Wu Pangyun shouted angrily. The plump first level upper tier Holy King snorted, "Little rascal, surrender immediately, I still need to capture them." Scram. Moon cracking palm. Wu Pangyun turned vicious and attacked in a near-suicidal manner. The sharp offensive stance of the plump Holy King was actually suppressed. He was momentarily paralyzed against Wu Pangyun. Scram. Or else you and I will perish together. Wu Pangyun shouted angrily, trying to figure out how to escape. At that moment, an indifferent voice could be heard from above his head. Perish together, you. Wu Pangyun squinted his eyes, his heart thumped madly. There was actually someone above his head, and yet he did not notice at all. Raising his head, a black-robed, burly, one-eyed person stood with his arms folded. As he looked down on Wu Pangyun, he had a condescending glare. Kneel. The one-eyed person lightly tapped his foot at Wu Pangyun's head. Poof. Wu Pangyun's face momentarily turned red and he spewed a mouth of blood. A blow akin to a mountainous strike descended from the sky and suppressed the island reef. Both of Wu Pangyun's knees hit the ground with a thud as his body trembled immensely. He had actually been suppressed without any chance to retaliate, or with a mere foot from the opponent. Useless. To be unable to defeat this child. The one-eyed person glared at the plump Holy King. As a first-level upper-tier Holy King, he was sweating profusely. Lord Blood Hands, please pardon my offense. Bring him away, I will chase after the other two little rascals. Blood Hand's eyes revealed a cold look, as he looked at the black figures in the distance. He grinned. I've finally found you. Swoosh. Blood Hands charged over at a lightning speed. Su Yu turned around to look, and his face turned paper white. He gasped in astonishment, first-level peak-tier Holy King. Yunyan's heart trembled immensely and her face flushed. Su Yu, I will join hands with you. Even if we die in battle. Unexpectedly, Su Yu shook his head and sighed lightly. Yunyan, he's after me. You should immediately flee, should you be lucky enough to make it back to Liuxun faction. Please find Qin Xian'er and Qia Jingyu, who have just entered the faction, and tell them that I, Su Yu, once stepped foot onto Zhenlong continent. In his heart, the people he missed the most were Qin Xian'er and Qia Jingyu. One was his fiancée, while the other one was his truest friend. Should he die during this journey, he wanted someone to tell them that he, Su Yu, had managed to get onto Zhenlong continent, and he had done so for them. Su Yu fled in the opposite direction, leaving her with his request and a parting smile. Su Yu, Yunyan muttered tearfully. Looking distantly at Su Yu's figure, headed toward death, Yunyan recalled that parting smile which shook her heart. In order to not implicate her, Su Yu would rather fight the first-level peak-tier Holy King alone. Never had a man done such things for her. Su Yu, you must return alive. Memories from the past 5 days flashed before her eyes. Thinking about Su Yu's death turned her heart sour, already deeply in grief. Wiping away her tears, Yunyan quickly fled in the direction of Lixian faction. As expected, Bloodhands chose to chase after Su Yu without any hesitation. After 2 hours, he finally caught up. Youngster, for me to personally chase after you, you should die with pride. Bloodhand's gaze was murderous. Su Yu's expression remained calm, as he revealed a sliver of confidence, HMPH. Don't be so cocky. Swoosh. Su Yu dived headfirst into the sea. End of the chapter. The Divine Nine Dragon will be read in 5 chapters for every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday and Sunday. Please leave this sound novel and press subscribe, follow, and the bell so you don't miss any new clips as well. See you.